focusing your attention on your heart. Also see if you can connect with your intention for joining this class this evening. And just see what arises in terms of motivation, intention. What spending time here might do for yourself and for others. And then for a moment, just release the thoughts, just release all effort, release all agenda, and just rest. Okay. So today, my intention is to talk a little bit about feelings, and specifically, so in Buddhist psychology, this term feeling, or Vedana in Sanskrit, specifically refers to just three categories of feeling, which is pleasure, displeasure, or indifference. So you have your positive feelings, your negative feelings, and your neutral feelings, I guess we could call them. And so this is something that the Buddha gave great importance to. And a lot of the teachings on the applications of mindfulness, for example, is about just looking into feelings and this raw feeling tone that actually accompanies every single mental state. So if we look into our minds, we will always discover this feeling state. It's attached to every single experience that we're having, and it's constantly ongoing, and it's driving most of what we think, do, and how we act. And the Dalai Lama was asked, I don't really remember when this was, but he was asked, what is the most like fundamental psychological drive of people? And of course, he answered in general terms for something that is true for all sentient beings. But he thought for a while, and then he said, well, the most fundamental aspect of being a sentient being is that we care. So everyone cares. Doesn't matter if you're a mosquito or an animal, or if you're in a deva realm, or even if you're if you're an enlightened being, the one thing that connects everyone is that we care. And this caring manifests as feelings. These days they talk about creating conscious machines, or intelligent machines that would be conscious, but and sometimes we have this idea that they might be free from feeling, and they wouldn't have that aspect of consciousness. But from a Buddhist perspective, there could never be consciousness or mind without a feeling tone, without this fundamental caring. So that would just be science fiction, that whole idea. So if we look at our feelings, we start to realize that we strongly identify with them. So we're saying, I am happy, I am sad, I am my feeling. And then we also connect that feeling with something external. So he, she, it, they made me happy. And then we run around looking for the people and the places and the situations and the possessions that will bring us that happiness that we desire, that will bring us those positive emotions and help us avoid the negative emotions. So as a contemplative, as an inner being, which is what the Tibetans would call a Buddhist, we need to start observing our feelings and see what causes them, etc., and be aware of these feelings or emotions as sparks before they result in behavior and so on. So we need to cultivate this ability of paying really, really close attention to Vedana, or this feeling tone, because we're all the time desperately just chasing after the things that we think will make us happy. I wish I would be rich. I wish I would be famous, more powerful, have more financial success, own more stuff, be the boss of many people. So we're it's like a deer in the headlights, just constantly neurotically with this great craving, running around looking for the things that will satisfy us, that will make us happy. And in doing so, we're also oftentimes throwing away this precious opportunity that we have to lead a life that can be truly meaningful and bring us on the path to enlightenment and benefit many, many other people. And instead, we're like a moron, like an imbecile that just chase after things that will not grant us any lasting satisfaction whatsoever. And we don't necessarily have to make this or do this or learn this lesson ourselves. We can just look around the world, especially in this era of the internet. We can see so many rich and famous people, and we can clearly observe that they are no more happy than anyone else. So why would we bother with fame and power and possessions? So to start to unravel all of this and kind of extract ourselves from this samsaric treadmill of just running around looking for things that will hopefully satisfy ourselves, we can really start to look into to these feelings and the nature of them, because a positive or pleasurable feeling in itself, that's not a mental affliction. It's not a problem whatsoever. In fact, it's wonderful. Pleasurable feelings are fantastic, but the problem is that they so easily and so instantly trigger attachment, because we attribute the positive feeling to whatever that external object is, that person, that situation. So we think that this wonderful person, they are causing my pleasurable feeling, or this wonderful meal, or this wonderful experience. So then we get attached to it and we want more of it. So the pleasurable feeling ends up just fueling all of samsara and just driving our attachments. And it's so easy for pleasurable feelings to give a rise to attachment, because we think the object is the cause of that happy feeling. And also, if we're experiencing displeasure or an unhappy feeling, we have the opposite, because then we think, that horrible person is causing me to be angry. The prime minister on the TV is somehow injecting aversion into my mind and causing this unpleasant feeling. So the unpleasant feeling in itself, again, not a mental affliction. It's not a problem experiencing displeasure or a negative feeling. But again, it so easily triggers that anger and that aversion. And the anger can, we can be angry at being unhappy. We can be angry at being ill, angry at being in physical pain. I mean, that happens, of course. How can this happen to me? God, why did you do this to me? Curse you, karma, whatever. But the thing is, the negative or the displeasurable feeling immediately triggers aversion, and again we run off on this samsaric treadmill. And then of course we have the neutral feelings, which is not just the absence of positive or negative. It's a more active it's an active unawareness, the boredom, the I don't care. There's like living life in this numb stupor. So that feeling tone is a trigger for ignorance and unawareness, and also for that reason problematic. But then there's the other side of the flip side of the coin. So the feelings are associated with the mental poisons of attachment, aversion, and ignorance. But on the flip side, it's also true that if we're experiencing pleasurable feelings, if we're happy, then it's much more easy to be happy for other people's success, for their joys. It's easy for us to wish them happiness and experience sympathetic joy. It's a great launching pad for loving kindness. So if we can pay attention to that positive feeling and then nurture those aspects instead, we can go a completely different route, which is a route towards awakening rather than getting more enmeshed in samsara. And also, if we're experiencing negative emotions or displeasure, that can be a launching pad for developing compassion. So if we really pay attention to negative emotions that arise from just a correct understanding of the pain in the world, all the suffering that's there, it can lead to the development of more caring and compassion. And in the same way, the neutral feelings can be a launching pad for developing the sublime virtue of impartiality or equanimity. So the role of feelings in Dharma practice, and also like why do these feelings arise in our mind at all? I mean, one way of looking at it is because it's like our Buddha nature will not allow us to rest until we realize fundamentally who we are and wake up. So the suffering will always be there, the discontentment will always be there until we develop compassion and wisdom and realize reality. Those feelings will always drive us. They will never let us rest until we do that. And then the feelings, the pleasurable feelings, will always be there as a way for us to develop more sympathetic joy and more loving kindness and more caring. It's like our Buddha nature will never let us rest from neither negative or positive feelings until we use them as a way of waking up. And none of this will happen until we start to be able to really, really look deeply into our feelings, the feelings that accompany every single mental event in every single second of our conscious experience. So, man, there's so little time, but I thought I'll take a few more minutes, because I thought it would be good to do a little meditation and actually just start practicing this ability of looking into feelings and the feeling tone of every moment. And also, so that's like the easy part, to just start to see that, you know, if a thought arises, a memory or some external stimuli, that's always going to trigger a feeling. You know, we have a memory and we get this nice feeling, or we have a memory and we get this bad feeling, negative feeling, and it's just automatic. It just arises out of causes and conditions. So starting to observe that, the easy part, then the hard part is to start to distinguish the feelings that are authentic, maybe a good word. So in the way of being based in reality, like observing the suffering and samsara and developing sadness and compassion from that, or observing the success of someone and taking delight and joy in that. That's authentic. And separating that from, well, inauthentic is I don't know if it's a good word. It can be misunderstood, I think, but inauthentic in the way that this feeling is actually based in attachment. It's based in being enmeshed in this storyline of conditioned existence, and tainted by the delusion that the things and people bring us our happiness or bring us our suffering. And just starting to separate, are these feelings, or this feeling that I'm experiencing right now, is it arising from clearly seeing reality as it is, or is it just arising out of attachment? And that's super tricky, and I think it's a lifelong thing to just starting to be able to pay closer and closer attention, and also doing it automatically. So when a feeling arises, we clearly see how it arose, and then we can relate to it accordingly. So I'll, if you have any questions or comments, or want to share something, we can do that after this little short meditation that I thought we could do right now. It would be good to have, say, an hour to do the meditation, but we don't. So it's just going to be a few minutes, but maybe we'll be able to just give us a taste of observing Vedana or feelings in our own mind. So yeah, see if you can just find a comfortable position and allow your attention to return to yourself. Become aware of your body, of your mind. And then allow yourself to observe the space of your mind, kind of like observing, like you were sitting in the audience of a theater and you're observing the stage. And on that stage, different actors appear, different props. Just like in your mind, there will be memories appearing, impulses, mental images. And feelings. So see if you can pay attention to the feeling tone of your current reality. Is it pleasurable or unpleasurable or neutral? And then if some mental event arises, like some inner dialogue or a memory, just pay attention to whether that mental event also triggers a change in your feeling tone. And as those various mental events come and go, as these feelings arise and subside, see if you can also pay attention to whether they are tinged by or enmeshed in or arise out of attachment or aversion. Out of wanting something or trying to avoid something. Or see if they're instead potentially more authentic or reality based. And you can also be aware that the feelings that arise, they arise as a result of past karma, of past actions, of past habits. So they just arise and we have no control over that. But then how we respond to them, how we react with our thoughts, with our actions, with our speech, that is what creates new karma. These are the actions that shape our mind for the future. And that's something we have some control over. So by becoming more aware of our feelings and notice how they compel us or propel us to act in certain ways, then we can also act more skillfully. So becoming intimately aware of and befriending our feelings is immensely important in our Dharma practice. Okay, and with that, we can end this very brief meditation and bring our attention back to each other. Okay, that, I hope that meditation wasn't too short and at least somewhat meaningful. And I'm just going to, open it up after my blah, 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 and that meditation, and see if there are any thoughts, comments, questions.
Well, you know me, I always got something to say, right?
Excellent.
Well, my mom said something today that just broke my heart. And a little bit of background here. 3 years ago, I divorced and was basically forced out of where I'd been for decades. I hadn't seen my grandmother or my mother in seriously 10, 20 years. So when I had to leave the situation I was in, I had to be back with my family. So I moved back in with my mom. And I also went to see my grandmother, her mom, for the first time in years. And I started noticing patterns of self-deprecation, of just bitterness, just depression that I knew that were part of me that I didn't know where they had come from before until I started recognizing these patterns. And so I'm glad I got to see my grandmother actually passed away late last year. So I'm glad I got to see her before the end. But I'm seeing the patterns still happening. And today, I don't know, I don't even know how it came up. I was in the kitchen, I was cooking something, and I think I was listening to some audio book on self-care or something, and it said something about being kind to yourself. And she said, I don't want to be kind to myself. I don't like myself. And I was like, why not? Why don't you like yourself? You're pretty likable. And she's just, wouldn't have it at all. And it just kind of broke my heart. I mean, me and my mom have a pretty rocky history, but I care about her. I'd like her to not hate herself. And I'm starting to see that the way I feel about myself affects my kids too. So I'm seeing these patterns and how we affect each other, and how, and getting in touch with the feelings that are, come along with that. It's just, I can see this going back generations and looking at my kids who are in their 20s and 30s, just going, crap, what have I done? Because I've only recently started learning to like myself. It's been like within the past year. So thoughts on that? I'd appreciate your insight on that.
Well, it's it's horribly sad when we, again, the negative feelings we feel when we associate that, when the object is ourselves, when the undesirable object is the self narrative, or the way we perceive ourselves. Because then what the aversion does, or the self-hatred does, is that it it wants to destroy or get rid of that object, which is terribly hard when it's ourselves. And of course, from that comes that is what depression is a lot of time, that anger or that aversion towards ourselves, or rather toward a story, a narrative that can never be true. So the story we tell ourselves about who we are, it's never true, and especially not when it's negative or destructive. Then it's quite clear that it's not based in reality, and it's just causing ourselves pain. So I'm really, it's wonderful to hear that you've been able to start to treat yourself in a different way, with more care and more love. The Buddha said that you can look throughout the entire universe for someone who is more deserving of your love than yourself, and you will never find such a being. That doesn't mean that others aren't equally deserving of your love, but it means that you are fully and completely deserving of your own love. So I guess in terms of what I talked about initially, it's it can be that process of just becoming aware of these negative feelings when they arise, and then with awareness and over time, they can instead be a trigger for compassion towards ourselves rather than hatred towards ourselves, as a conscious way of breaking free from the habitual patterns that were passed on to you by your grandmother and your mother and probably your grandmother's grandmother. And it's like we're teaching we want our kids to be happy, and then we're teaching them all the ways that they're not good enough, in order for them to for that reason change and become happy. I don't know, it's horribly sad, but
well, I've noticed that the way my mom feels about herself directly affects how I feel about myself, and I think that was my grandmother as well. And it just is so, it was kind of an interesting, curious moment, at the same time that it was a terrible, thing to hear. But it's also, wow, when she says I hate myself, I feel that in my soul, even though it's not me thinking that. It's just the kind of bond, even if you don't have a direct, even if we've had a very rocky history and haven't, seen eye to eye about a lot of things in a long time, it's still something that it's almost like, I don't know, Thich Nhat Hanh talked a lot about how you are a continuation of your parents. And I think that's hidden. Yeah.
Yeah, and in that way, you're transforming her pain and her mother's pain and her mother's pain, and and hopefully all that pain can just be the nutriment for compassion. Like Thich Nhat Hanh says, the lotus grows from the mud. So all that ancestral mud can hopefully be the soil from which the lotus of love and compassion can grow for you, because then it becomes meaningful, what your poor mother has been through, and her poor mother, and yourself, if that can be transformed into care and compassion instead.
I like the term ancestral mud. That's perfect.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
please go ahead there in Australia.
All righty. Okay. I too love that expression, ancestral mud. That's great. My question is this. You talked about the fact that Buddha said that loving oneself, most important. Where would I find that? I'm quite curious about what literature that's in. That would be helpful for me.
Yeah, I'll let me write that. I can I'll send you the source for the quotes that I just gave. You know, you can look around in the world trying to find a being more deserving of your love than yourself. It's in a sutra somewhere. I'll send that over.
Beautiful.
But then also, just if you look at the traditional teachings on loving kindness meditation, for example, it's always the first step is always loving kindness towards oneself.
Yeah.
So it's also, you know, practically embedded in a lot of teachings. And I guess sometimes in, you know, the Tibetan style of teaching, where they talk a lot about self-cherishing being like the great evil, that can easily be misunderstood in our culture, because I mean, it is true, self-grasping, etc. is the source of all our misery, but we can hear that wrong sometimes and think that it doesn't, or it means that, you know, means that we shouldn't cultivate love and care and compassion for ourselves, and it definitely doesn't mean that. But yeah, I'll see if I can can I send that to you, Paula, or if there's some material.
Martin, anything you send to me gets stored and I can distribute next time, next week.
Great.
Yep. Wonderful.
And then if I can, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Is there a concern that we would get attached to feeling compassion, because it's a sensation that I find gratifying, pleasurable? So I'm just wondering if there's some sort of concern about getting attached to that, in fact.
Interesting. Well, I think that would be actually a wonderful attachment. You know, like I think it would be an attachment that could be recommended even. So we have, you know, sometimes you hear like desire, attachment, and so on, that they're all bad. But you know, if we have a desire to wake up, or if we have a desire for compassion, then that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. I mean, of course, we have to be careful, because this whole, you know, any kind of spiritual practice can be just this great ego project, you know, where, you know, I'm this wonderful, compassionate, spiritual, holy person. And that, you know, that becomes an identity, and then we push that identity onto others, and we flaunt our great compassion or whatever it is. I mean, that's a trap. But I think if you're actually attached to feeling genuine compassion, I would say just go for it. It's a much better attachment than chocolate cake or Netflix. So yeah, I can't see a problem with it, really.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Or do you have what do you think? Would there be downsides to being attached to compassion?
No, I think you've identified the downside, which is the ego issue, that there's this subtlety that goes on. Oh, I'm a really good person because I'm feeling this. Yes, I agree. That is something that can lead me astray for sure, is arrogance. That's no problem. Yeah.
And also I guess the spark of compassion is I don't know, in psychology is called empathetic resonance or sympathetic resonance. So when you're actually experiencing the pain of someone else, and that's not fun at all. I mean, that's pain. That's an unpleasant feeling. And also if we stay in that state, that's what leads to what's sometimes called compassion fatigue, when you have nurses or doctors getting all drained because they stay in that empathetic resonance, and it's good to feel the pain of the other, but you cannot stay there. You have to move on to compassion, which is a more positive or energized state of mind that will not drain your energy, it will give you energy. So it's also, you have to be careful and not get stuck in that in the feeling of another's pain. It's a necessary first step to develop compassion, but you don't want to get stuck there.
Thank you.
I'm interested if you have any tips on kind of transmuting that empathic or empathetic resonance, because I'm a healthcare worker and I feel that sincerely. And yeah, sometimes it's hard to flip the switch and utilize it in a beneficial way, not just in a way that can obviously lead to burnout and fatigue, for sure.
Yeah, it's hard, and sometimes in order not to experience too much pain, we tend to shut down instead, or we distance ourselves to protect ourselves, and it's not so easy. I think well, first of all, just creating more space around that pain, paying attention to it's like when our mind gets very narrow and we kind of focus on that pain or that unsatisfactory situation or that person who is suffering, it just becomes our entire field of vision. So to just cultivate that ability of creating more space and opening the mind up and seeing that there's always more going on than this specific pain or this specific situation. And sometimes also cultivating that ability of self-care and self-compassion as a way of making us stronger, in a sense, when we're encountering others suffering. But it's tricky. It's really tricky. I wish I had a really good answer to give you right now, but I can't find one. I think it's wonderful that, sorry?
Oh, you absolutely did. The creating space within that strong, negative, narrow view of suffering, allowing that spaciousness is just what I needed to hear. I appreciate it.
That's fantastic. And also, if you see someone like His Holiness, you can see him cry about something. Someone shares a story, and he empathizes with it and he cries, and then 2 seconds later he's joyful and happy, and it's okay. So it's like we think that we can't be joyful while this person or that person or these 2 billion animals or whatever are suffering, but it is okay to be joyful and happy and rejoice in all the good things that are there as well. So sometimes just allowing ourselves to experience joy, even though we have a patient who is in real deep agony, that's also okay, because we can move in and out of those things, and don't cling to them, just, more easygoing about it, maybe.
Can I also volunteer that what I found helpful, because I've done social work for years, is I burnt out initially, and then I recognized that there was a purpose to that suffering. And certainly Buddhism talks about that as well, that this is only part of the journey. It's not the whole thing. And when I see suffering in that context, I can be much more accepting of it and let go of it. Support the person, empathize and be with it, but not feel depressed by it, because it's got a purpose to it.
Yeah, wonderful. Don't be afraid of suffering, because suffering is absolutely necessary for us to wake up. We should actually be more afraid if we ever find ourselves in a situation where everything is perfect. In Buddhism, we talk about these deva realms, where these godlike creatures just experience bliss constantly, and sometimes we can have that situation in life. We're in a really good spot, and everything is just fantastic, wonderful, and that can be a real trap, because there's no incentive for change, there's no impetus for growth, there's no reason for us to look deeper, because we're all content and it's all good. So maybe we should be more afraid of that situation than the situation where we are suffering and aware of others suffering. Although it sounds, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Martin, I'm really sorry to interrupt. All I was going to say is I love how people are just coming forwards. It's a relatively small group, so it doesn't have to be formal at all. So just go ahead and mute and do your thing. I think Martin's okay with that style.
Yeah, just definitely. We're so few people, so just go right ahead. And also feel free to interrupt me if I'm on a rant. How about you, Victor? Do you have any thoughts or things that come up?
Yeah, I'm really absorbing everybody's point of view and comments, and it's all really wonderful. I've got nothing really to add. In fact, I'm picking up things and understanding it. I think it's wonderful. I think whoever all of you are saying, I totally agree with it. It's very profound in so many ways. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Will I throw something in?
Please go ahead.
2 things, because time moves very quickly, as we've seen. Number one, would it benefit the format of this class, do you think if we were to extend it by an extra 30 minutes, would that buy us a little breathing time?
Yeah, I think that might be a good idea, actually. And you know, if we were to realize that an hour has gone by and there's absolutely nothing more to say, then you could always cut it short, I guess. But yeah, I think maybe having a bit more time. Also, I think it's good to, like I tried doing today, to have a little bit of practice in there as well, and that becomes very short with the current format. I think.
I'll put it to the center manager, because there isn't another class after this until Venerable Katie comes in. So there's a full hour. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, also, if you wouldn't want to make it too long, because then it can get, that's not good if it's too long. But maybe, and actually even just an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and 30 minutes, I think would be good. But yeah, how does the group feel about that? Maybe you'd be terribly bored going over an hour.
No, I love that feeling awareness meditation. I would have loved a little bit longer of that. So definitely got my vote.
We had a couple of thumbs up there, Martin. So I'll try it. It depends on the center manager.
Yeah, but yeah, I would be happy to extend it, definitely. Okay, and we're now almost at the hour, so perhaps this is even though we talk about extending the class, maybe this is a good place today to end. Or sorry, Pao, did you say you had two things?
Yeah, the other thing, silly. I was just going to say that I noticed that I live by myself, and sometimes I sing very badly, and that is a key. So when I sing, I think, "Whoa, I'm singing," and that tells me that I've put away all my stresses and troubles for a while. And so that, if you like, joy just manifests, and I chirp away for a bit, and I think, look at that. That's it.
Wonderful. It's like, oh, look at that. I'm obviously joyful. Yeah. And if there were other people with you, maybe they would be less joyful. If your singing is terrible. No, I'm just kidding.
It is.
No, I think they would be happy as well, seeing you happy. Yeah, so let's maybe just dedicate whatever positive energy we have generated by thinking about these things and sharing our experience, discussing, and it cannot be overstated how important it is to make that shift from being completely absorbed and hypnotized with everything that's out there, and just flipping the gaze 180 degrees and starting to really look inside and pay attention to all the stuff going on, and in this case our feelings and how they arise and what they cause and so on. It is the path out of here. It's the path to freedom, and it's wonderful that we've embarked on that path, and may it bring benefit to ourselves, and may it bring lots of benefit to everyone else. And hopefully this time spent together is a piece of wonderful merit that can ripple out and bring benefit to the world. thank you for joining. And good evening in your case. I have a good bit of the day left, so but I'll see you next week.